On a warm evening in Brasilia, two clubs you've probably never heard of played a match inside one of the biggest stadiums in Brazil. The place holds 72,000 people. About 100 showed up. You could hear individual voices echo across rows and rows of empty plastic seats. This was the Mané Garrincha, named after one of the most gifted players Brazil ever produced, built for the 2014 World Cup at a cost that ran past $500 million. Today, its parking lot serves as a depot for city buses. That stadium is a clue. To understand why a country would spend that kind of money on something that ends up parking buses, you have to look at what the World Cup really is once you strip away the football. For 1 month every 4 years, a host country builds a temporary economy. Hotels fill, restaurants run double shifts, airports, trains, police, broadcasters, advertisers, street vendors, all of them get pulled into a single event watched by a good chunk of the planet. The final in 2022 drew close to 1.5 billion viewers. Nothing else on Earth gathers people quite like it, so there's real money moving. The argument host countries make, the one their leaders repeat when they're selling the idea to voters, goes like this. We'll spend a lot up front, we'll build stadiums and roads and airports, but the tourists will come, the jobs will appear, the world will see us, and it'll all pay for itself. The body that runs all of this is FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, the governing organization for world soccer, based in Switzerland. FIFA owns the tournament. It picks the host, it sets the terms. And the terms are where this story lives. Because there's one thing most people never check. When you ask whether hosting the World Cup pays off, you're assuming the host gets to keep what the tournament earns. They don't. Not most of it. And once you see how the money's split, that empty stadium in Brasilia stops looking like a planning mistake and starts looking like the predictable result of a deal that was lopsided from the start. Start with FIFA's haul. In the 4-year cycle that ended with Qatar in 2022, FIFA brought in $7.5 billion. That's a record, confirmed in FIFA's own annual report. The single biggest piece came from selling the right to broadcast the matches. Television networks around the world pay for the privilege of showing the games, and in that cycle, those broadcast deals alone brought in over $3 billion. Then come the sponsors, the companies whose logos you see ringing the pitch and stamped on everything official. After that, hospitality, meaning the premium packages sold to people who want fancy seats and catered boxes. Then ticket sales. Then licensing, the cut FIFA takes when someone sells an official jersey or a video game. Now watch where each of those dollars goes. The broadcast money, FIFA keeps. The sponsorship money, FIFA keeps. Ticket revenue runs through FIFA. Even on the official resale market, where one fan sells a ticket to another, FIFA has taken a reported cut of around 30% of the resale price. The advertising boards inside the stadium, FIFA controls those too. So what's left for the host? The bill. Think of it like a touring concert that rolls into your town. The promoter keeps the ticket money, the merchandise money, the broadcast money. Your city pays for the traffic control, the extra police, the road closures, the ambulances on standby. When the band leaves, you've got the bill and a good story. The difference is that a concert leaves in one night. A World Cup leaves you with a stadium. Andrew Zimbalist, a sports economist who's studied this for years, put it plainly. FIFA collects the revenue. The host cities carry the costs, and those costs can run well past $100 million per city. Security, transportation, the fan festivals, the policing, the cleanup. The host pays for the party. FIFA cashes the checks. It gets sharper. To even bid for a World Cup, a country has to promise FIFA something specific. Tax breaks. FIFA and its major sponsors operate largely tax-free inside the host nation during the tournament. When Germany bid for 2006, it offered around $270 million in tax exemptions as part of the package. So the money the tournament generates inside your borders, a big slice of it leaves untaxed. On paper, FIFA is a nonprofit association under Swiss law. The idea is that it doesn't pay profits out to shareholders, it reinvests in the sport. And it does fund football development around the world. That part is true. But a nonprofit can still sit on a mountain of cash. At the end of 2022, FIFA's reserves hit nearly $4 billion. Its president, Gianni Infantino, took home a compensation package worth around $3.9 million that year, with a bonus that jumped by several $100,000 after the Qatar tournament went well. Nonprofit, in this case, describes the tax status. It does not describe the bank balance. One more thing shows how confident this machine is. By the end of 2021, a full year before a ball was kicked in Qatar, FIFA had already locked in over $6 billion of its target income for the cycle. The revenue is sold before the tournament even happens. The result on the field is almost beside the point to the balance sheet. Stop and look at the shape of this for a second. Every major stream of money the World Cup produces, the television deals, the sponsors, the tickets, the branding, runs uphill to one organization in Switzerland. The host country's job in this arrangement is to build the stage, pay the security, hand over the tax breaks, and hope the leftovers, the tourists and their spending, add up to something. This wasn't always the deal. The model got rewritten over the last few decades into the version we have now, where the body that owns the tournament takes the rewards, and the country that hosts it takes the risk. So the real question isn't whether the World Cup makes money. It clearly does. The question is, who's standing underneath when the money comes down? Before we get to that, a question worth sitting with. If your city could host the World Cup, would you want it? Now look at what hosting costs. Economists have gone back and checked the promise against the record. Researchers at the University of Toronto looked at recent tournaments and found that 12 of the last 14 World Cups left their host cities with a net economic loss. Not a windfall, a loss. The forecast before each tournament glowed. The results after kept coming up short. Take the one a lot of Americans remember fondly, the 1994 World Cup held across the United States. It's remembered as a commercial high point, the tournament that planted soccer in American soil. And for FIFA, it worked. But later estimates put the cumulative economic loss to the host cities at as much as $9.3 billion. The event everyone calls a success still drained the places that staged it. Why does this keep happening? A couple of reasons stack up. The first is displacement. The tourists who come for the World Cup often replace the tourists who would have come anyway. Regular visitors steer clear of a host country during the tournament. They don't want the crowds, the jacked-up hotel prices, the chaos. During Qatar 2022, if you didn't have a match ticket, you couldn't even enter the country for stretches of the tournament. So the visitor spending isn't all new money. A lot of it just swaps one kind of tourist for another. The second reason you can go and visit in person, the stadiums. A country bids, it promises FIFA a set number of world-class venues, and it builds them, whether or not it has any use for them afterward. The word for a building like that is a white elephant, something enormous and expensive that costs more to keep than it could ever bring back. Brazil 2014 is the Museum of White Elephants. The country spent around $3 billion on 12 stadiums, most of it public money. Go back to the Mané Garrincha from the opening. It ran roughly 3 times over its estimated cost, somewhere between $550 and $900 million, depending on whose accounting you trust, making it the most expensive stadium of that World Cup. The trouble is that Brasilia doesn't have a major professional football team. There was nobody to fill 72,000 seats after the tournament left. So the offices got rented to civil servants, and the car park became a bus depot. It had company. In Cuiabá, the Arena Pantanal cost over $200 million and got shut down for emergency repairs 7 months after hosting 4 matches. Water leaks, construction problems. Other Brazilian stadiums ended up hosting children's parties, religious services, even weddings, anything to bring in a little money against the upkeep. In one of them, homeless families sheltered in the unused locker rooms. You might assume the lesson is simple, that hosting is a scam and everyone loses. Then you run into Germany. Germany 2006 is the host everyone holds up as the one that got it right. Existing stadiums mostly, instead of building from nothing. Smart use of temporary fan zones. A famously joyful tournament that lifted the country's mood and its standing abroad. The model host. And even Germany didn't really profit. When economists went back and measured the hard numbers, the retail sales, the hotel stays, the tourism income, they found the measurable effect was small. One careful study identified around 700,000 extra overnight hotel stays and roughly $900 million in net tourism income against the billions spent. The economist who ran one of the most cited reviews concluded that the usual reasoning about tourism and retail boosts was mostly of little value and might even be wrong. So what did Germany get? Not a return on the spreadsheet. It got an image, a feeling, a few weeks where the whole country felt good, and the rest of the world saw a warm, modern, open Germany. That was the prize. And it's worth being honest that it was the prize. Because once you accept that even the best-run World Cup doesn't pay for itself in cash, the whole justification moves on to different ground. So now the two halves fit together. On one side, a revenue machine built so the money flows up and out to FIFA. On the other, a cost structure dropped onto the host, with stadiums that turn into bus depots and a tourism bump that mostly cancels itself out. And in the middle, the uncomfortable finding that even the country that did everything right didn't come out ahead in dollars, which means the honest case for hosting was never really about money. It was about something you can't put on a balance sheet: pride, standing in the world, the chance to show a billion people what your country looks like. That's a real thing to want, but it has a price, and so far we've only counted that price in concrete and cash. There's another column, and it's the one nobody puts in the bid: Qatar. When FIFA awarded the 2022 World Cup to Qatar back in 2010, it handed the tournament to a country smaller than Connecticut, with summer heat that can climb toward 120 degrees and almost no existing stadiums. So Qatar built. It poured an estimated $200 billion into the effort, though it's worth saying that most of that went into broad national projects: a new metro, an airport, hotels, highways, not just the 8 stadiums themselves. But you don't build all of that in a desert with the local workforce. Qatar has a population of under 3 million people, and roughly 2 million of them are migrant workers, mostly from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. They made up the overwhelming majority of the labor force. They built the stadiums, the roads, the hotels. The conditions drew alarm for years. In 2021, The Guardian reported that more than 6,500 migrant workers from those 5 countries had died in Qatar since it won the bid, an average of about a dozen a week. The reporting drew on government records from the workers' home countries, and the paper noted the true figure was likely higher. Qatar disputed how those deaths were counted, pointing out that many weren't directly tied to stadium construction. The exact number is contested. The scale of the human stake is not. Here is the comparison that lands hardest. The total prize money handed out to the teams at Qatar 2022 was $440 million. Amnesty International and other rights groups called on FIFA to set aside that exact amount, $440 million, to compensate the workers and their families. They chose the number on purpose. They wanted the money paid to the people who built the tournament to equal the money paid to the people who played in it. That cost never appeared on FIFA's balance sheet. It doesn't show up in the $7.5 billion. It was paid all the same. Now point this back at your own life, because the pattern here is bigger than soccer. Strip the World Cup down and you've got a simple machine. One party keeps the revenue, another party absorbs the cost, and the second party agrees to it because they've been sold on benefits that are hard to measure and easy to promise. Economists have a plain phrase for this shape: private gains, public costs. The upside is captured by a few. The bill is spread across everyone. You'll find that same machine far outside of football. It's in the Olympics, which leaves behind its own graveyard of unused venues. It's in the deals where a city hands a sports team hundreds of millions in public money to build a stadium on the promise of jobs and energy that rarely show up at the size promised. The script barely changes. Spend public money now on the strength of benefits later that somehow never arrive quite as large as you were told. And it's happening right now, in real time. The 2026 World Cup kicked off this month across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, the largest one ever. 48 teams instead of 32, more than 100 matches. FIFA is projecting record revenue for the cycle, with estimates running past $13 billion. The host cities, meanwhile, are the ones covering security, transportation, and policing. The structure you just learned isn't history. It's the tournament on your screen tonight. None of this is a reason to skip the games, and it isn't a lecture about what to do with your money. Nothing here is financial advice. It's a way to see the thing clearly. To know, when somebody promises that a giant event will pay for your city, exactly which column you're sitting in. So here's the tell. Whenever the case for a giant project leans on words like exposure, prestige, putting us on the map, or a vague promise that the spending will pay for itself through tourism, that's your signal. It means the people selling it can't point to revenue the host gets to keep. They're selling a feeling and calling it an investment. A feeling can be worth buying. Germany decided its few weeks of joy and a better image were worth the cost, and maybe they were. But that's a choice a country should make with its eyes open, knowing it's paying for pride, not profit. The danger comes when a feeling gets dressed up as a financial return, because then nobody asks the right question until the stadium's already empty. The question is always the same. Who keeps the money this generates, and who pays if it doesn't work out? If those are two different parties, you already know how it ends. You don't need to be an economist to ask it. You just need to know that the glossy forecast and the final receipt are rarely the same document. Go back to Brasilia. That stadium, 72,000 seats, $500 million, named for a man who played the most joyful football the world had ever seen. 100 people in the stands and buses parked where the crowds were supposed to be. It isn't a failure of planning. It's exactly what the deal was always going to produce. The football was real. The party was real. The bill stayed behind after everyone went home. If this made something click, hit like and subscribe. If your city could host the World Cup, would you want it?